There is a quiet exhaustion that comes from giving too much of yourself to everyone around you. It is not the kind of tiredness that sleep fixes. It is the kind that builds slowly over months and years. The kind that makes you feel hollow even when your life looks perfectly fine from the outside. Most people never connect this feeling to the real cause, which is the absence of emotional boundaries. Emotional boundaries are not walls. They are not about shutting people out or becoming cold and distant. They are the invisible lines that define where your emotional responsibility ends and someone else's begins. Without them, you absorb other people's moods, carry their problems as if they were your own, and constantly shrink yourself to keep others comfortable. The result is a life where you are always available for everyone except yourself. You say yes when every part of you wants to say no. You apologize for things that are not your fault. You feel guilty for having needs. You twist yourself into shapes that do not fit just to avoid conflict or disapproval. And the longer this goes on, the more disconnected you become from your own emotions, your own desires, and your own sense of self. Understanding emotional boundaries begins with recognizing that your feelings are yours and other people's feelings are theirs. This sounds simple, but it is one of the most difficult things to truly internalize, especially if you grew up in an environment where your emotions were dismissed, where you were expected to manage the feelings of the adults around you, or where love felt conditional on your compliance. The good news is that emotional boundaries can be learned. They are a skill, not a personality trait. And once you begin to build them, everything changes. People often misunderstand what emotional boundaries look like in practice. They imagine someone who is blunt, unapologetic, and unbothered by others. But real emotional boundaries are far more nuanced than that. A person with healthy emotional boundaries can be deeply empathetic and still not take on the emotional weight of everyone around them. They can care about someone's pain without feeling responsible for fixing it. They can listen without losing themselves in the conversation. Think about the last time someone close to you was in a bad mood and you immediately started scanning the room, wondering what you did wrong, adjusting your behavior to try to make things better. That is a boundary issue. Their emotional state pulled you out of your own center and into a state of anxiety and hypervigilance. A person with strong emotional boundaries would notice the other person's mood, feel compassion, and still remain grounded in their own emotional state. They would not automatically assume responsibility. Another example is the way people respond to criticism. Without emotional boundaries, criticism feels like an attack on your entire identity. You either collapse into shame or you become defensive and aggressive because you have no filter between the comment and your core sense of self. With emotional boundaries, you can hear criticism, evaluate whether it is valid, take what is useful, and release the rest without it destroying your sense of worth. Emotional boundaries also show up in how you handle other people's expectations. When someone is disappointed in you, do you immediately try to fix their feelings even if you did nothing wrong? Do you over-explain, over-apologize, and contort your choices to match what they wanted? That pattern is a sign that you have been conditioned to take responsibility for emotions that do not belong to you. Recognizing these patterns is the first step. The second step is understanding why they exist in the first place. The reason most people struggle with emotional boundaries is not weakness. It is conditioning. From a very young age, many of us were taught, either explicitly or through experience, that our worth was tied to how well we managed the emotions of others. Children who grew up with emotionally volatile parents learned to read the room constantly. They became experts at anticipating moods, diffusing tension, and keeping the peace. This was a survival strategy. The problem is that survival strategies from childhood do not automatically update when you become an adult. They keep running in the background, shaping how you respond to conflict, criticism, and emotional intensity in your relationships. Beyond childhood, culture plays a massive role. Many communities and traditions teach that putting yourself first is selfish, that a good person always sacrifices for others, and that expressing your own needs is a form of weakness or ingratitude. These messages get internalized so deeply that setting a boundary can feel like a moral failure rather than an act of self-respect. There is also the fear of abandonment. For many people, the thought of someone being upset with them triggers a deep, primal anxiety. Setting a boundary risks disapproval, conflict, or rejection. And when your nervous system has been trained to treat disapproval as a threat to your survival, you will do almost anything to avoid it, including abandoning your own needs entirely. Understanding these roots does not mean you are stuck with them. It means you can approach the work of building boundaries with compassion for yourself rather than frustration. You are not broken. You adapted, and now you get to choose differently. Building emotional boundaries starts with awareness, specifically the ability to notice what you are feeling in real time. Most people who struggle with boundaries have learned to disconnect from their own emotions as a coping mechanism. They are so focused on what others are feeling that they lose track of their own internal experience. So the first practice is simple, but powerful. Start checking in with yourself throughout the day. Ask yourself what you are feeling right now, not what you think you should be feeling, and not what would be most convenient for the people around you. Just what is actually happening inside you. This practice alone begins to rebuild the connection between you and your own emotional life. The next step is learning to pause before you respond. When someone makes a request, expresses disappointment, or puts pressure on you emotionally, your conditioned response will kick in almost immediately. The pause is where your power lives. In that pause, you can ask yourself whether this is your responsibility, whether saying yes actually aligns with your values and capacity, and what you actually want to do, rather than what you feel pressured to do. Communicating boundaries does not require lengthy explanations or apologies. You do not owe anyone a detailed justification for your limits. A simple, calm statement is enough. Saying something like, "I am not able to take that on right now," or "I need some time before we continue this conversation," is complete in itself. The discomfort you feel after setting a boundary is not a sign that you did something wrong. It is a sign that you are doing something new. Expect the discomfort. Let it be there. And do not let it talk you out of the boundary you just set. When you begin to build genuine emotional boundaries, something remarkable starts to happen. The relationships in your life begin to shift. Some will deepen because real intimacy requires two people who are both present as themselves, not one person constantly shrinking to accommodate the other. Others may fade, and that is okay. Relationships that only worked because you had no limits were never truly nourishing you. Your energy changes. When you stop absorbing everyone else's emotional weight, you have more of yourself available. You think more clearly. You feel more grounded. You stop moving through the world in a state of constant low-grade anxiety, always bracing for the next emotional demand. Your relationship with yourself changes most of all. You begin to trust yourself. You stop second-guessing every decision through the lens of how it will affect everyone else. You start making choices that are actually aligned with who you are and what you value. This is not selfishness. This is integrity. Emotional boundaries are ultimately an act of love, both for yourself and for the people around you. When you are not depleted, resentful, and running on empty, you can show up with genuine care rather than obligatory compliance. You can be present without being consumed. You can give without losing yourself. The 5 minutes you spend understanding this concept today could be the beginning of a fundamental shift in how you move through every relationship in your life. The work is not always easy, but it is always worth it. Start small. Start now. And trust that every boundary you set is a step toward the version of yourself that you actually want to be.